what if the skills that make you successful at work are actually hurting you at home? Jeff Hittner has interviewed over 200 fathers and discovered 6 major dad gaps that leave the most ambitious parents feeling disconnected and half present. Today, he's revealing what those gaps are and how to close them so you can finally lead with clarity both at work and with your kids. So stay tuned. Welcome to Fulfillment Therapy. I'm Kendra Nielsen, wife, mom, and licensed therapist. Do you ever feel like you're doing everything right, but you're still exhausted and empty? Did you think life, marriage, and parenting would be simpler and more rewarding? Sometimes you just want to crawl back into bed and lose yourself in screen time and chocolate, rather than face that personal or family stress. You are not alone. This podcast helps you break free of the rat race and build a richer, more meaningful life, flourishing incrementally and realistically, improving your mental health and wellness, and living with deeper purpose beyond the mundane, no matter where you are in life's journey. Welcome back to Fulfillment Therapy. Today we have a special guest here with us, Jeff Hittner. He's an executive coach, leadership expert, and founder of Ambitious Dads, helping fathers lead with as much clarity and purpose at home as they do at work. After discovering he couldn't become a biological father, Jeff reimagined fatherhood as an identity grounded in emotional presence and intentionality, and is now the proud dad of 2 boys. Having interviewed more than 200 fathers about the challenge of succeeding both at work and at home, he began writing extensively on the topic and launched the Ambitious Dads podcast, sitting uniquely in the intersection of executive coaching and modern fatherhood. Thanks for being here, Jeff.
Wonderful to be here.
Tell us about why you're in the space, why you love it.
The short version is 2 parts. The first part is my whole life I knew I wanted to be a dad. And when I found out I couldn't be a biological dad, I had to transform the definition of fatherhood for me. Now I have 2 boys. They're 5 and 8, and they're the light of my life. And if I hadn't been able to transform my mindset about that, I wouldn't have the life I have today. It also helped me realize how much our own fixed mindset, our ideas, hold us back from being the people we want to be. And it's a big motivator for the work I do as an executive coach and a leadership expert. About 2 years ago, I started noticing, I coach all these CEOs, and they're men and women. But the men I was coaching, when I asked them questions about their vision for their career or their company, they could answer it in like 2 seconds. But when I asked them those same questions about their family and fatherhood, they had no answers. I got really curious about this, and I decided to investigate. I decided to interview 50 ambitious dads and see what's going on. Like, what is modern fatherhood, and trying to balance modern fatherhood and career ambition? What's working, what's not? We got to interview number 4 and was like, oh my God, I am learning so much. I need to start writing. I started a Substack blog, written more than 50 articles, now interviewed more than 200 dads, launched the Ambitious Dads podcast last year, which is doing really well. It's been amazing. As selfish a journey as it could be, because every interview I learn more about new ideas around fatherhood and feel less alone about the challenges. So many things dads are experiencing and feeling challenged in and don't know they're not all by themselves in this. We don't talk enough. That's one of the big gaps I identified for these ambitious dads. And there's a lot of others. This has been incredibly helpful for me and super fulfilling as well. So that's the journey.
Thanks for breaking that down. That's one of my favorite parts about being a counselor too, is hearing people's stories and learning from them and recognizing, wow, we are not alone. Many of us are experiencing the same things, but we just assume that we are the odd one that's having these experiences by ourselves. If we only knew, we wouldn't feel so alone. I'm glad that you're going to speak to that in a minute. Tell us a little bit about the gaps you talk about on your podcast. Can you share some of those with us? I know it's probably a lot, but can you break that down?
No, I would love to. So there's 6 dad gaps I've identified. The biggest one is what I call the time gap, right? Which is this work-life balance where we're never fully present. We're always half somewhere else. We're not winning either with work or at home. The challenge around this for men is, and this leads into another gap. The second gap I'd like to talk about is called the brotherhood gap, which is women are so good at generally getting together and talking through frustrations. Men aren't even having this conversation. So they're in these gaps by themselves. They have no other dads to talk to realize, wow, like I'm not alone in this struggle. Like this balance feels impossible. Like it's not just work and family. It's also my relationship with my partner and my own healthcare. Those are the 2 really big gaps. And then another huge gap I call the confidence gap. Modern fatherhood, 92% of dads, their primary identity when asked is, I am a dad. But when you ask how confident are you in your fatherhood, only a third feel confident in the types of fathers that they are. That means that 2/3 plus of men are walking around feeling like they are not good at what they are doing. Men that feel shame is not a good thing. We're walking around with this sense like, I'm not a good dad. You probably are a great dad, but you're not having conversations to know that the challenges you're running into, so many other dads and moms are running into. The fourth gap is the role model gap. We don't really have a blueprint for what modern fatherhood is. Most of our parents, as modern dads, we don't have examples from our fathers being nearly as engaged as we are and or want to be. I wrote about this. What does it mean to be a provider today as a dad? Men today want to provide at an emotional level, not merely a financial level. And that is a big separator. We don't have a lot of role models from that perspective. And then there's the co-parenting gap. Both sides will agree we're often not great at communicating, solving challenges with our kids. We have different approaches to parenthood and see challenges very differently. One person will bend on a hard and fast rule about a way to eat. One parent will see it as a one-time thing to get through dinner. The other will see it as the beginning of the end. You've broken the rule. Now our child is going to always ask for this. There are a lot of challenges around co-parenting. The final one I talk about is the legacy gap. Dads are spending most of their time reacting and not doing what I call intentional parenting. That can only come when we actually know who we want to be as dads. This is what I focus on in the programs I run around fatherhood. I run a program called the Founding Fathers Program for dads, a 10-week program where we build out our fatherhood philosophy so we can be intentional in our parenting. These are the 6 big gaps I have found through my research.
I love that. So many things you talked about resonated. And thinking about parents in general, I know are speaking to dads here, but except for some exceptions, like how women often don't feel quite as alone, although they do, just in a different way. I think a lot of can apply to moms as well. I don't want to take it away from the dads because I love that you're speaking to that too, but it does resonate with what I'm hearing my clients say, what I feel as a parent. We talked about this before. I have 4 kids, told this on a previous podcast, but I've recently been talking with one client. He's very successful in his business, never made more money. He looks back on this last year and has sadness, regret, because the things that matter most, his relationships, his family, have suffered. He just doesn't have a lot to show for it in that regard. Like exactly what you were saying with your story of they know all these goals and things that they want to do and very expressive in talking about work, but then you talk about parenting and home relationships and they're kind of drawing a blank. What do I want to do? How am I living intentionally? How is that improving? And same thing with my client. It's been interesting for him to explore that. You're really afraid and stuck, not sure what to do. You talked about cultures. My husband and I had to explore our family culture growing up, both of ours, and even our culture right now in America. A lot of those don't align with what we want. We had great families, but the dads weren't emotionally available. There wasn't a lot of engagement. It's more like they go do their own thing. And my stepdad, for example, after dinner, he'd shut the door in his TV room and he wouldn't engage at all. And we would see him after work at dinner, and that was kind of it. And woman's in the kitchen, like so reevaluating that. What does this look like now? We've come so far, but I would love to hear more about how you've learned through those 200 interviews to improve that, like the culture that we grew up in, especially if you don't have mentors, because you're right. It's not just emotional even, but it's with tech. It's with so many things that our parents didn't face. Tell us more about that.
I think it goes back to this idea of what does it mean to be an intentional parent, right? And, asked a lot, what's a good dad? What's the difference between a good dad and a great dad? A good dad is someone who's present, right? It's just able to put the phone aside and be present for their kids in all sorts of different moments. A great dad is intentional, who has a vision for how they want to parent and how they want to show up for their kids and the values that they want to share. One of my big challenges, like many men, is I didn't learn how to emotionally regulate myself until after I had kids. I wasn't forced to, with the same sort of daily challenges that you have with a toddler, with a newborn, with multiple kids, with all the stressors that are going on. And I started seeing my dysregulation mirrored in my oldest sons. And it was so disheartening for me. I felt like such a failure. My youngest came along and his skill was temper tantrums, and they were not 5 or 10-minute tantrums. These were like 30-minute tantrums, and I couldn't get past minute 1 or 2 without being of no value because I was super dysregulated. And as I started to learn and get better at this stuff, I realized, one, I needed help. 1 minute became 2 minutes, became 3 minutes that I could manage. But then I would still tell my wife, look, I need to tag out because if I don't, it's just going to go downhill. And she was patient and let that happen. And now he doesn't have them anymore. But I got to that point where I could sit in for those 20 or 30 minutes while he moved from this dysregulated state to one where he could handle himself. But that required me learning about my emotions and recognizing my own childhood. The fact that I couldn't handle that was a result of not being given permission to have those emotions myself when I was young. There's often a commonality with the dads I work with, the ones open to the type of work and change and intentionality I talk about. They've also had their own therapy because so many of us, I write about this all the time, like to be better dads. It's not what are the plans that we need to put in front of our children. It's how do we need to grow and change as men and as people. As I got better with my emotional regulation, thinking forward to the intentionality, it was like, okay, I also know I'm going to screw up. How do I feel like our family loves to repair because we love to give each other hugs. I make it a point for my children to see me trying to improve as a dad. I tell them very explicitly, I say, look, dad is working on trying to be more patient, or dad is working on his tone of voice. And so if you don't like my tone of voice, tell me because I'm working on it. Sometimes when they do something that requires a strict tone, to be like, Dad, you can't raise your voice at us. And they'll be like, no, this time I can because that was really dangerous. We're living in the 21st century, changing fast. Growth is a value. Continuous learning is critical in our family. I want my children to see that daddy is always learning and always trying to grow and improve, because whatever careers they end up with are also going to disappear with the next type of technology. They're going to have to learn something else and something else. All of these things are interwoven into how I think of intentionality and being the example I never had.
I appreciated how you said daddy is still learning and trying to model that. I'm thinking about ways we can model. For example, last night, I didn't realize how much I was being overstimulated with young kids for a long time, and slowly learning that, better managing my emotions, regulating those better. Last night, I was feeling super tense. So like, name it to tame it. You just say it out loud. I'm just feeling really overwhelmed right now. I'm feeling very overstimulated with a lot of noises and gentle reminders of wants and needs. And when that didn't work, I'm going to put myself in my bedroom for a bit, feeling very overstimulated because I don't want to take it out on anyone. Modeling it's okay to take a break, managing how you're feeling when you're feeling overstimulated. You mentioned that. You talked about how important it is to get therapy. Many people talk to me since I'm a therapist. They say, if you go to a therapist, they're too far gone already. You have to be suicidal to see a therapist. And there's still stigma after all of these years. It makes me sad to hear that because so much of it is just about emotional regulation and repair. I learned so much later than I needed to, and so much more heartache than I needed to experience, like on how to repair and communicate better and have proper apologies. That has been a really big thing. Just last night, my son came to me and apologized for something. This is my son that's quite stubborn and likes to just blame it on everyone else. Starting to wonder if it would ever happen. Maybe he's just not going to take ownership. Then he came and apologized a couple different times, and I was like, oh, this is so beautiful. Sometimes you just got to hold on because it will come. I appreciate you sharing about the therapy part, the emotional regulation, the repair, and that you're always learning, modeling those things.
On the therapy piece, we're maybe bifurcating in the States. There are men that see like, yes, I need to grow and change if I want to be a better dad. And that means being vulnerable. The hardest piece of therapy is recognizing that vulnerability, but it's also the piece that makes us better dads. And then there's the group that still think that sort of vulnerability, not modeled to them as men, is something they want to shy away from. My whole experience with all the dads that I've spoken to, all the coaching of fathers that I've done, if you're not capable of that vulnerability, your capacity to change and be what your child needs in specific moments is limited. I think the best way to make change in our communities is to talk about it. That also goes for couples therapy. As a leadership expert working with executives, I love to bring up communication work I've done in couples therapy. Out of every 2 executive trainings that I'm doing, as long as I mention couples therapy once, someone will ask about it because I've made it okay to talk about it by saying I do couples therapy or individual therapy. We just need to keep doing it, doing more of it. There's no downside.
I completely agree with that. We need to keep being told this is an acceptable thing, an important thing. So then with your clients, Jeff, when they come in and you mentioned these 6 different gaps, do you identify which ones are bigger in their life and work through it? Walk us through that with a client.
We're centered on creating a fatherhood philosophy. The starting point is understanding what values drive them and the values they want to drive with their family and partner. There's a lot of steps. One fun one I talk about, and this isn't even around emotional regulation, which we also do a lot of work on, is defining your role as a dad. When my kids were 2, 3, and 4, I let them know my number one role as your dad is to keep you safe. That's my number one job, right? When they would be doing something stupid, I'd say stop, and they say, why? I said, remember, what's my number one job? And they go, to keep us safe. And I go, that's right. That's why I'm telling you to stop jumping off the table. As they've gotten a little older, I tell them my number one responsibility as your dad is to help you learn and grow. Every time they get older, I redefine my number one job. Another way to reinst the values I'm trying to say are important, but it's also another way to feel more confident in my fatherhood, to end arguments quickly. Another aspect I'll touch on with dads is emotional regulation. More than 3/4 of the dads I work with, particularly in groups, have never heard the word trigger. They don't know what a trigger is. So we have to start at that baseline. Over the top reaction to a situation, and it's not about your child, it's about you. Let's lean into that and understand a little. We dive into that aspect. It's also about defining things. These are ambitious dads. They care about work, they care about their families, and they haven't actually, what does it mean to be a provider? Is it really a financial thing anymore? How do you define providing? The role of money in your family. How have you grown up seeing it? Do you see it as something scarce and you want your kids to see it that way, as something else, like a means to an end, and you want them to have a different vantage point? We go through themes and topics both on their relationship with themselves, also some skills to develop as dads, but also a vision for how they want to father, depending on the age of their kid, over the coming 12 months, 18 months, 3 years. My favorite thing was to work in groups for the same reason I shared earlier around the brotherhood gap, which is dads talking with each other. I had this great experience in one of my sessions with the Founding Fathers group. One dad was like, I am the worst dad. Yesterday, I was supposed to be watching my son, and he was maybe 6 or 7 months old. I turned around for a second, and he rolled off the couch, and he fell on his head. I can't believe my son fell on his head. It's all my fault. And I was like, whoa. Before you beat yourself up, let's do a little poll. Raise your hand if you have dropped your child. 2/3 of the hands went up. And I was like, welcome to the club. We are completely imperfect, and that is going to happen. We need to know that our imperfection is actually what makes us caring dads in some respects. He's never going to make that mistake again, but he's also not going to beat himself up so much because he knows he's not alone in dropping his child.
Yeah, that's a perfect example of things we can normalize when we don't know unless we're talking to other people. And I think you're right. A lot of times women are talking about these types of things more, so they recognize, okay, maybe I'm not the only one. Thank you for being here for part 1 with Jeff Hintner. If you're feeling inspired to show up differently in your parenting and want personalized support, head to fulfillmenttherapy.org to sign up for individual coaching. Your presence matters just as much as your productivity. Check it out on fulfillmenttherapy.org. We'll see you back here for part 2. Hey friends, if you enjoyed this episode, a quick 30-second share can help someone else find support and help this podcast grow. Leaving a review on Apple Podcasts boosts visibility and keeps the show alive. Your simple acts make a big difference. I'll see you back here each week for more life-changing episodes.